So the other day I put a picture on Facebook of Pegao, which is the sticky bottom of Puerto Rican rice that I was eating with sliced avocado. People thought that looked so yummy, so they asked me for a recipe. It's kind of a feel thing, and I couldn't find a recipe on YouTube, so I'm going to demonstrate it right now. So to make sticky rice, basically you make a batch of arroz blanco, white rice, in the Puerto Rican way. And since you want the rice to stick, it's important that you not use a non-stick pan, because that will get in the way of sticking. So what I have here is a caldero. It's actually a very small one, and I must have half a dozen of these, and I use this small one, which isn't much bigger than the size of my hand, when I make white rice. And I only make white rice in it, and that way it doesn't get any vestiges of tomato sauce or wine or any other dish I could make. So here is my caldero. So I start by adding just a shimmer of olive oil to this pan. Not a lot, just enough to kind of barely coat the bottom of the pan. I turn the heat to high on the average burner, the normal burner on the stove. I have a gas stove, and I could use the super burner here, which is very intense, gets lots of BTUs, gets things really hot, searing. But if I tried to make rice there, the rice would cook too quickly and it would disrupt the chemistry of what I'm trying to do. So instead, I've got my oil heating here, and maybe just a minute or so. I want it pretty hot. And I have just making rice for 2 people, so I have like a half a cup of medium grain rice. It's very important that the rice be medium grain, because the different types of rice have different cooking qualities, different amounts of starch. I know sometimes it's hard to get medium grain rice. I know from experience. If you look in the international or Spanish section of your grocery store, you might find it there, arroz grano mediano. So the oil is pretty hot now, and I'm going to throw in about a half a cup of rice. And I'm going to follow that with water. Here comes the water, and you should hear that nice little sizzle, and that tells me that it's nice and hot in the pan. It's useful to use a nice metal spoon to make the rice, because you're going to eventually need to scrape the caldero to pick up the crispy rice. And I don't measure. My grandmother, whom I learned this from, or I observed her making it, didn't measure. And so how much water? Well, I said it was about half a cup of rice. I never measure the water, but what I'm looking for is when I put the spoon on the rice, that the water completely and easily cover the spoon. And you can see it's not quite there. I have to kind of press the spoon down to get a little bit more water in the bowl of the spoon. So I'm going to add some water, and I'm going to measure it again, and that's better for sure. I think I'm going to put a little bit more water. If I had the time, I would make about 10 batches of white rice with different amounts of water. That's great. To see how that water heat rice combination affects the quality of the pegao. I suspect that there is a relationship. I just don't know what it is. So I've got the burner on high. I've got the rice and the water in there. And the only other thing I need for now is some salt. Again, because I don't measure, I don't really know how much salt, but it's just a goodly amount. I'm always afraid when I'm shaking salt in like this that the thing is going to pop off and it's going to be a disaster, but it hasn't happened yet. So a goodly amount of salt. Despite how much I put in there, seemingly, I bet I'll have to put in some more. And now I'm just going to stir it, just to mix the salt in. And now I'm just going to let this boil on high, undisturbed, probably for at least 5 minutes. until the water begins to evaporate, and I'll show you what that stage looks like next. So the water, the rice and water have begun to boil. It's been maybe 3 or 4 minutes, so the water when I added it to the rice was just normal room temperature water, tap temperature water, and they've warmed up together, and now they're going to boil away for a while. Probably another 5 minutes before I have to take the next step, and the whole time the rice is uncovered. Still boiling. So you might wonder whether or not I wash the rice. I don't. I think some people think it's good to wash the rice because it takes away some of the starch. I think medium grain isn't as starchy as other rices. Of course, the relationship could be exactly the opposite. I'm not sure. But other people say when you wash the rice, you wash away the nutrients. So I don't wash it, and I'm happy with the results. More boiling, and you can see there's just a little evidence of evaporation. Still boiling away. One thing I'm doing right now is just adjusting the position of the caldero on the burner. Sometimes part of your pot really isn't on the heat, and I think to make good Pegao, you want the heat to be well distributed, and so that's what I was doing there, just adjusting the position. All this time I've just got it full throttle. All right, the water level has definitely come down. It's hard probably to see in this camera, but you can see the rice kernels underneath the bubbling water, so you know that we're very close to the surface of the rice. So at this point I'm going to stir it a bit. So definitely stirring. You can see there's not a whole lot of standing water. Very close to the point where I'm going to cover it. What I'm looking for is all of the standing water to be gone, but the rice still to be quite moist. And it kind of looks like an erupting volcano, right? Like the caldero of a volcano, hence why the calderos of volcanoes are called calderos. So it's the opposite of how I started. Remember how I was looking for the water to rush easily onto the spoon, and now I really don't want the water to rush onto the spoon. So I think we're where we should be. So I'm just going to stir it a little bit, try to mound it up a little bit, so that it's in a bit of a mountain. It's hard to do when it's wet. Bring it down to exactly half burner, and then I'm going to cover it with a good lid. So it's important to have a good lid, fits well. And now it's going to sit here pretty much undisturbed for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to tell you the time. Time right now is, well, someone's texting me, so I don't know the time. 3:55. And so I'm going to see how long it takes to cook. So I said I was going to check it in about 10 minutes. It's probably been closer to 7 or 8, but I heard a little crackle, and your ears are part of cooking too, because your food will sound different at different stages. So I'm just going to give it a check. Oh, look at that.
Whoops, I'm on the wrong side.
It's got it's got a nice characteristic, the rice. It's definitely not ready yet, but see, here's what's happening. As I mound it up, now I can mound it up a little bit more to a mountain, and you can see that there's a layer that is stuck to the bottom of the rice, and that
To the pan.
to the bottom of the pan, and that's what you want. You want to see that happening, and I'm going to cover it again. I'm going to leave it on medium-high heat, but I'm going to taste this little bit of rice that's on the pan, left on the spoon for doneness. And, you want the rice to have body, but you want it to be not unlike pasta, kind of soft.
Al dente.
Al dente, yes. It's good. Still a little bit too hard, so I'm going to leave it on medium, probably another 2 minutes, and taste it again, and I bet it'll be ready to get down to low. All right. So it's been about 3 or 4 minutes later. Actually, I got a little distracted, so it's more like 5 minutes later. And I'm gonna check my rice again. Oh, look at this. This is actually perfect. Now you see how beautifully fluffy it is. And now you can also see that that crusty rice is beginning to get a little caramelization, which you want. At this point, you do pile the white rice that you're going to eat as just plain rice into a little bit of a mountain. And then now you've got this crust all the way around. And you bring it down to low as it'll go, and you cover it again, and basically it's done until you're going to serve. Now, the longer you leave the rice on medium, the more the Pegao will turn brown, will caramelize. So it's really a matter of taste. And as soon as you bring the stove down to low, you're still going to get some caramelization, but much less. So sometimes when I forget about my rice and I come back, I've got really brown, crispy Pegao, and that can also be very good. So the rice is done, and I'm getting ready to serve it, and this is when I'm going to take out the Pegao. So you can see I have nice white, fluffy rice with separate grains, and then that crust behind it of crispy rice. So what I'll do is take out the main rice so we can serve it. We're having it with orange chicken today. So I'm just picking it up. And when I get it all in the pot, you'll see that there's a lovely crispy layer underneath, which is just so good to eat. So, put that over here. Now I'm just going to pick up the pot, looking for something to put the crispy rice in. Gonna pick up the pot with my hand, and here's a reason why a good hefty metal spoon is very useful here. And I'm just gonna start scraping it off. And look at that. This turned out to be really beautiful because it's sometimes you have to scrape and scrape it and scrape, and it doesn't come out like this in layers. But this one, and I have to say the mystery of the right volume of water, the right length of heat. I never know exactly how my Pegao is going to turn out, but this is like perfect. The best possible scenario where it's come out in big layers. And I'm going to slice an avocado into it, and I'm going to eat it. And that's how you make Puerto Rican Pegao.